Hello everyone, welcome to my live stream. I finally got set up somewhat for some physical media streaming. I just pushed my monitor back on this desk that I'm borrowing. Today I'm going to do a Art Snacks challenge, and I'm using the February box items. What an Art Snacks challenge is that you take just the materials you got in your box for that month. Art Snacks is a monthly art supply subscription where every month is a surprise what you're going to get. And you make a piece of artwork using only those items. There are times when I allow myself to use other things. For instance, I'll allow myself to use a pencil if I don't have a pencil and I need to use one to do the initial sketch or something like that. But luckily, this box came with a pencil. So the supplies I'm using are this 2H graphite pencil, a black pen, 2 colors of watercolor paint, and it also came with this brush, so I'm gonna be sure to use only this brush. It also came with a bonus item, which is this little tester sheet of paper. So of course I'm going to be doing my challenge on this paper so that it feels like a real complete challenge to me. A few other things I'm using: a bowl of water for the watercolor, paper towel to wipe my brush on, and I've got my palette here. I'm going to put the watercolors in. So I picked out a reference image yesterday. I was having a really hard time deciding how to use this white watercolor because the paper's white. So if you do white watercolor on white paper, you're not going to notice it. And since I got yellow, even mixing white with yellow, it's going to look the same as if I had just spread the yellow out on the paper and not even mixed in white. But I realized that if I could do something that was shiny, draw something shiny, then I could use the white to do some reflections. So what I decided to do to also fit the format of this paper is draw a gray heron's head, because they have long beaks, long yellow beaks, and yellow eyes as well. And even better, once I looked them up, it's a great use of the pen and the pencil because the herons have gray and black feathers on, in addition to the white or extremely light gray feathers that they have. And that's great because when I get a pencil, I don't usually like to use it just for doing the outlines and then covering it up with the ink. When I do the challenge, I want you to be able to see that I use this pencil. I want the graphite to show at the end. Hold on, my cat's being naughty. I left my filing cabinet drawer open. I had to get some stuff out of it, and he started digging in there, trying to get in there. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do to start out for this challenge is put the watercolor paints in here. Actually, I'm going to wipe these out. This is kind of dusty. I'm probably not going to need very much. It's one of the things I really like about watercolor. You don't have to use much paint, and once it dries, you can just keep using it. It doesn't ever go to waste, so it's really cost efficient. And a little bit of yellow there, and a little bit of white. If I need more, then I'll add more. So I'm just gonna only use these 2. These other colors are from when I did a test with some other Art Snacks supplies a long time ago. Okay, now I've got my brush, but I'm probably not going to start painting it. What I want to do first is do the initial sketch. I've got a reference image of a heron, so it'll actually look like the animal instead of just my memory of the animal, because I've never seen one up as close as this picture is. I have a general idea what they look like, but I like to get specific. And the beak comes down, meets up there, curves down, and then kind of comes back up a little bit, and then curves down one more time. And past this line comes this part, goes up a little bit, and then back down, and curves up just a little bit where it closes. Now, it actually has feathers coming down off of from about the midpoint of the beak. And this heron has just been fishing, so all its feathers are clumped together because they're wet. The beak is wet too, so it's actually even more perfect for using the white for highlights, since there's all this white reflection from the droplets of water. Now this ruff comes pretty far back. It comes back beyond this line. I think it's about here, and then it starts curving down for the neck. And then like we'll continue down this way. Now, got that. Its feathers wrap around its beak up here and follow it until it meets them kind of in there. Excellent. And there is this. I think I'll save that. But it has a ridge along the edge of the top part of its beak. Almost like a knife. Looks like the edge of a knife, kind of. Okay, now I'm looking at this. I need to make this top part come up a little higher. I'm not going to use an eraser for this. Sometimes I might allow myself an eraser, but this time I'm just going to try not erasing. I'm just going to draw it as best I can without erasing. Okay, I want to draw the eye. So this actually hooks down like this, corner of its mouth. And its eye, it looks pretty round, but it's not actually perfectly round. I'm going to draw these feathers here, come off the beak, and then go around the eye. It's kind of flat on the top, and then it almost has a square shape. So it's kind of flat on the side, and then here it's flat, but it angles inwards a little bit more. And then the bottom is pretty round, like that. And its pupil, it's looking forward, so the pupil's a little bit forward. And it has some darker feathers coming around. It makes this look like a little, I don't know, winged eyeliner or something. And here it comes down to. Now, I need to not forget nostril on the beak. I don't know if they call it a nostril on a beak. That's what I think of it as, though. It's the equivalent. There. Now, I'm going to draw the lines to show where the black feathers start here on the forehead. You can actually still see the white feathers all along the head. along the top of the head, at least the part that is fitting on this paper. Sort of come down. There, how's that? Bring this line back a little bit more. Okay. Now I'm thinking whether I should do the ink first or do the paint first. Because these Micron pens, I've never used this one. This one's called PN, and I think it stands for plastic nib. It's waterproof, but not until it dries. So it might be easier if I just do the watercolor now. Although then that takes a while to dry too. Dang it. I'll do the watercolor first. I think I'll feel better about the blacks will come out nice and dark if I do them after the watercolor, because the watercolor will probably, even if you can't see it as well on black as you would on white, it still leaves something. You'd still see something on top of the black ink, and I don't want that. So I'm using this little brush. Brushes is something I might allow myself to use if I got like a water-soluble marker or something. But since this came with a brush, this Art Snacks box, I'm limiting myself to this one specific brush. It's actually been a while since I've used watercolors. They're one of my favorite media, but I think it's because I got those Inktense pencils a couple Christmases ago, and they are so great. And it's like watercolor, but you draw it on like a colored pencil sort of, and then you watercolor it. Ever since I found those, I don't really feel like doing watercolor when I can use Inktense. So this heron's beak, I'd call it yellow overall, but it's actually not yellow like this paint. It's more, it's like if I had red in this box to mix it with, then I'd be able to get the beak shaded just like it is in this photo. But that's not the point of this challenge. The point is to use these Art Snacks items. And around here on the beak is actually gray right near the eye. And I wonder, now that I'm looking at it, I wonder if it's the same reason that like footballers put on their black stuff under their eyes. Maybe this bird evolved that because it helps prevent its own beak reflecting in its eyes. Okay, let's move on to the bottom. I'm putting on the most pigment at the end of the beak, and then using just water to spread it out back towards the rest of the head, because I want it to look different. So even though I have just one color to work with, I mean, I have white, but that's not really color. I want to make it look, I want to get a gradation effect so it's not all flat and boring. Also, hopefully that's coming through. I want it to be most pigmented over here. So I'm going to put a little bit more on even, with no, a little more than that, with no water, no extra water. just the paint. Keep spreading it down so that it's as colorful as can be around the tip of the beak. And then fades gradually down towards the head. I'll do a little bit more, but I think this is probably as far as I'm going to be able to push this yellow. We're getting the end to look different from the beginning, I guess. I'm also avoiding this, what is this? Yeah, I don't know, it's like a ridge in the beak. And I want that to stand out, so trying not to get too much color on that. Now the eye is also yellow. But maybe what I'll do for that to get a cool effect. Oops, I still have more paint in my brush. Come on, gotta clean this all the way out. There we go, that's better. I'm just gonna get the eye wet first. Get the paper wet. Get the paper wet where the eye is. That's what I'm doing. Clean my brush off and dry it off. Pretty good on the paper towel. Now I'm gonna put some paint on the corner. And it looks like the eye on this upper corner has a darker, it's like the edge is almost orange. I don't have orange, but I'm gonna just try to get a whole lot of pigment over here. But let it, since it's all wet, it will fade nicely, smoothly into the rest of the eye. I'm going to tap this to tap the pigment to the rest of the water on the eye. Yep, I think that looks good. I don't know if you can tell. It looks like it's coming through on the camera how this side of the eye is less pigmented than this side. So that even though I am stuck with just one color, I'm still getting some differences. Cleaning off my brush now. Since my workspace right now is just push my computer back, push my monitor back, and use the desk. I'm trying to be really careful not to get water on my screen. So I'm not cleaning my brush as vigorously as normally I would. Looks like it's pretty clean now. That's another thing I love about watercolors, cleanup, super easy. Your brushes last forever. They just last and last and last, and if you forget about them and let them dry overnight with the paint, it's just run some water over them and it comes right out. Okay. I think this is all I'm gonna do with the yellow watercolor. It needs to dry first. I'm gonna put it under my lamp. This lamp gets super hot, so hopefully it will help dry this bird. Dry, dry, dry. It's still wet, but an idea I had to do was that I can do in the meantime while this is still drying. Yeah, the beak's still a bit damp too. I was sketching yesterday, trying to figure out what the heck I should draw. I realized I could use the pencil to fill in the negative space so that the white feathers stand out even more. Since this, this paper is white, and if I just leave it a white background, even if I use ink on the feathers, it won't stand out as much unless I do something with the background. So I'm gonna fill this in. And I think what I'll do is not just fill this in, but do a gradient. I'll probably have it get really dark the closer to the bird it is, and then fade out to a lighter gray along the end. But first I'm just going to try to put it down evenly, put down the graphite evenly, and then I'll add on to it until I'm satisfied with how it looks. Trying to hold the paper. These little bookmark sized papers are kind of tough to work with. It's always so hard for me to think of how to use this space. So I like to use this space so that the picture looks like it was made for this size of paper, this format. At first I thought maybe I would draw a flower. Dang it, stop popping up. Because flowers, grow up. But when I drew it, I wasn't feeling it. It was coming across as too, I don't know. It wasn't inspiring to me. And I tried drawing a dragon, but since this paper is so small, I just wasn't feeling it for the dragon either. I didn't even actually draw a dragon. I drew like a coiling body, and then I finished it off so that it was a worm. Like an earthworm. But it was after that I thought of a long-beaked bird. And I started looking them up. And when I saw this gray heron, I was like, oh, that's exactly what I was thinking of. There are a lot of toucans came up in my search for long-beaked bird. But toucans, the beak is too thick. I wanted a thinner, sharper beak like this one. Okay, trying to be careful around these lines for the feathers, because I'm thinking I won't use the ink to outline the whole bird. I'm just going to use the ink on the places on the bird where it actually is like super dark and black. Otherwise I just want to use the pencil so that the pencil gets to shine through just as much. So I want to be careful filling in around these feathers so that I can still see their distinct shape. It's tough to get the paper to lay down so that I can fill this in. Come on, paper, do this. There. There. It's filled in, but I want to make it darker on this side. So I'm going to start. So it'll probably have to be the darkest right here because there's no equivalent space up at the top. I want to keep following this same angle of line. Oops. Sorry if I'm covering up the picture. Yeah, I'm totally covering up. Dang it. I've gotta hold this paper down somehow. I don't want to hold it on the areas where the graphite is because I'm gonna make a mess. I'll start smudging the graphite around. This kind of thing, how my pencil keeps going off the edge, is another reason why I've started, whenever I do a planned piece or illustration, I use a paper way bigger than what I want the final piece to be. Because in that way, you can just trim it when you're done, or mat it, or whatever, and then that way you're not getting this effect right here where you're like falling off the paper and it's messing up your strokes. But it's not something that I'm doing here because this is an Art Snacks challenge. I want it to fade nicely. I think I need to keep adding. That seems like a good gradation, I think. I'm going to do this top part. Try not to get it as dark as that bottom area I pointed out earlier, but I think I'm going to have to go over the bottom area again anyway, so it'll be okay if it ends up as dark. Just want to make it look like this and this are the same line, sort of, so that it looks like it's going behind the beak. It's kind of, my lamp makes it, when I put it up here, it's all way too bright. I think I'd still like to go a bit darker than this. I mean, overall, not just on this little section. Since this is a 2H pencil, it's kind of hard to get really dark marks out of it. 2H, H stands for hardness, so it's the opposite is B, and that either stands for bold or black. So, and they're like a range, like a spectrum. So we're well into the lighter line spectrum, which with a 2H pencil. What was that? Just need to fill in a little bit near the beak. Just these little, yeah. Okay, I think that's good for now, but if I finish the black and I don't like it, then I'll come back to it. But now I want to move on to the black pen. There are a few places, not very many, but a few places where I want to add black. So right here at the tip of the beak, where the top part's going over the bottom part. And it's actually interesting because this top part at the end overlaps the bottom, but it looks like the bottom actually sticks out more than the top does once you get to this part of the beak. So that's super interesting. It must be like a scissors effect. Probably good for catching fish. But I don't want it to be too heavy of a line because this is a really thin line here in the reference photo. I'm just going to leave it like that. Now the next dark area, really dark area, is the nostril. Basically fill that in because it's a big hole in the beak. So it's totally in shadow. Now there's like a little flap of something at the top of the nostril. So I'm not going to fill it totally in. The next dark line I want to do is this curve right here on the beak. And I'm going to do it all the way in. And I think I'll even thicken it on this part. Just barely, really subtle, but there is that difference. This part looks more deep, I guess. The beak goes in further. And next, I will do this right here. It's pretty dark, just barely where the feathers come over the eye, and a little bit where the eyelid, I guess. I'm not sure if birds have eyelids, but this skin around the eye, and one down here too. And then the eyeball itself has a really dark border, like inside this skin area. And it's thickest here because this feathery part is casting a shadow. And it's really thin here, but it gets heavier down here on the back side. And then a little bit underneath. Good, good. I'm just going to do a few little lines here. Now, this part right here is all black feathers, but even though they're black, because of the way the light is hitting the bird's head, there's actually a decent range of color. So I'm just going to start with some hatching to fill in. I'm not just going to fill it all in. That way, if I fill in with hatching, I can add more hatching on the areas where you can see that the feathers are darker. And then it will also give it the look of feathers in the first place by doing hatching. So there's lots of benefits to filling this area in with some hatching. The head is, you can't see on this picture, but the head is curving back quite a bit. So I want to make the feathers, I want to try to give that effect in this little small area that I have to work with. And that is by making sort of wedge shapes with the hatching to show that this is the smaller part of the curve and this is the bigger part of the curve. They still keep coming out like this though. Okay, Now let's start adding more right here. It's really dark on this part of the head. Now it's turning into more cross hatching, because of course the feathers are not actually like hairs, they make a different sort of line. So I'm going to do cross hatching to make it look more like feathers. And coming out of the front of the eye is pretty dark. And it sort of comes off here like this. Here too. This very front part is quite dark. Then as we get to the back of the head, there's a lot more dark, though this drawing doesn't even go that far. I think I'm going to fill in a little more overall so it doesn't look like it's balding or something. Okay, now I want to do a little more dark. Now I'm just going to start filling in to really get these dark, dark, dark spots that I'm seeing from the reference photo. No more hatching, just filling in shapes. Right here, there's a dark spot. It's kind of hard to see my reference image because I have it on my monitor, but I've got my lamp in front of my monitor to light my workspace. So the bright light, look up and I can't see anything. Okay, how's that? Maybe one more line fill in right here. Alright, I'll fill in a little bit more here too. Yay! I think that's good. Okay, this part of the feathers actually reaches down to the edge of the eye. I'm going to fill that in. What else? I think I might actually, well, there's like a couple little lines like that. And right here. And I'll do a few more thin ones reaching out here where the black and the white feathers overlap. Okay, I think that's good for that. Oh, gotten some graphite here. Oh well, no eraser this time. What I was going to do now is use the graphite. So the beak is casting a shadow on this part of these feathers that are hanging down. Wow, I'm definitely gonna have to make this darker. I'm gonna press down pretty hard this time, because in order for that shadow to work but also not fade into the background, this is gonna have to be much darker. Darn it, my pencil coming off every time. Ah! Ah! Just keep doing it. Oh well. It's a challenge. It's a challenge for so many reasons. Keep going, keep going. I'm gonna have to do the top two to make sure that the background matches. Okay. I'm gonna fade out here. Okay, now I'm gonna match this part of the background to the bottom. Oops, went onto the beak. Can't fix it, can't fix it. Just have to live with it. How's that? I think it still needs to be a bit darker than that. Okay. Oh, no. I don't know. Even this out. Ah, went on the beak again. Oh well. Okay. Now I shall add this shading. Try to be really light with it so that it doesn't match the background too much. And it comes under here. I'm going to draw a really hard line right here. I'm going to draw these feathers with hard lines so they stand out a bit more from the background. But I don't want to draw too many. I don't want to outline it like a cartoon or something. And I can see there's some little feathers coming back this way. So I'm going to add some little lines to show that. And there is a little bit of a shadow here. Oh, you know what? I forgot to do the pupil. The funnest part. Okay, pupil. With the pen. The pupil's definitely black. There. Can't believe that. Forgot the pupil. There. Good, good, good. Back to shading. Now this is the part I was mentioning. It's all gray right here. So I'm going to get that. It's a great place to use the pencil. And most of this area around the eye is also gray. It's like the skin itself is gray or something. Right here. And it sort of fades into this part. Feathers start here. And actually, kind of gray right here too. The feathers, sort of like the gray comes from the feathers or something. And then there's a shadow here from the contours of the beak. Leads right up to this part. And this, the bottom part of the beak is rounded, so there's some shadow there too. I want the beak to look all flat. And then here, where this edge or ridge or whatever it is, and along here, shadowy part. I'm going to use the pencil to bring these lines down into the white feathers. So this part's not boring. Oh, it's such a little part, but yes. Let's see, this part comes up a bit. You can barely tell, but there's the slightest little lines that the groups of feathers are making. I don't even know if, I don't think it's even showing up on the camera. And here. I wonder if I'm going to use my finger and blend this background. Might not make that big of a difference, but it's inspired by this smudge I made on the bottom with the side of my hand. Smooth these lines out and make the gradation nice and even looking. Yeah, like that. Doesn't smudge as much as a bolder pencil would. I'll get this graphite off my finger. Okay, now the thing that I spent so much time trying to figure out how to do using the white paint. So I think that I almost reached for the water, but I think I'm actually going to use a dry brush. This is pretty much dry now, so that I can use the paint as undiluted as possible. Although the little blub that I poured out is already drying, so we'll see how it works. Now, the shininess on the beak is a big one. I think I gotta get it a little bit wet. It's too pointy. It's coming out kind of like stringy. I need it to be smooth. Okay. The tip of the beak is extremely shiny. There's a drop of water and it's just right where the light is hitting the very tip. I need more water. It's not spreading. Okay, let's see if I can get this to work. There we go, that's better. The shine actually follows along this shadow of the beak for a while. And then this part is shiny. And actually there's quite a bit of shine along this whole beak. I'm just gonna keep adding on. it isn't a, well, it's a really textured highlight. The beak itself has a lot of texture to it. So it's not like one big shine. So I'm doing all these little lines to try and show that. And there is a little bit of white, though I don't think it's a highlight. I think it's more like feathers or something. Or, yeah, I'm not sure. It's not exactly highlight, but it is white area. White-ish, you know, relative. Right there. Yeah, where else? The eye doesn't actually have that strong of a shine in it. Like a highlight. Well, we'll see what I can do. It's actually kind of hard to do these highlights with this brush because it would be much easier with a tapered point brush instead of this flat one. I'm trying to use the corner of the flat brush. But it's still not that easy to control, to get really super thin lines out of it. A nice highlight there. Now, where else? Could try and show this drop of water. I don't think it's going to show up that well though. Even though I did this gray for the background, it doesn't really... Maybe once it's dry I'll go over it with a pencil to really make it look like it's a water droplet. Just give it an edge with a pencil. There are a few other little tiny water droplets. Just going to do little drops, little tiny dots of white paint. Hopefully that will give the right effect. Show that this is a wet beak. Couple here. Well, that's looking good so far. I don't think you can even see. Dang, can't really see these tiny little drops. They're still quite wet though, so I don't want to do any extra graphite yet. I'm gonna add one more paint here. My brush is getting a little too dry. I don't want it to get too wet because I want the white paint to really, I want to use it as opaquely as possible. And if I add too much water, it will really thin out. I think I might have gotten too much paint on my brush this time though. Tapping the brush to get some texture. Whatever this white stuff is here. It's not exactly highlight, it's something else. It's like a physical part of the bird. And indeed, it seems to come all the way down here. A little bit there. Do some here too. I thought I wouldn't use the ink for anything but the most dark areas, but I'm starting to think maybe I will outline a bit more. Even if it's not dark on the picture, when I look at the drawing, it needs something a bit darker. White paint, those little dots are still wet, so I'll try and avoid those. Like right here on the bottom side of the beak, I think it needs to be outlined. Try to do it really thin. And not a continuous line, then that way it won't look too strong. The black won't look too strong. Yeah. Yep. Wonder if I should do it at the top or just leave it on the bottom. I'm gonna do this curve. I'm gonna do a few of the feathers too. It's just not standing out as much as I wanted it to. Wanted to make sure the pencil showed. I think it shows anyway. Even if I ended up using the pen for the job that I tried to use the pencil for. It being the whole background and being the gray on the face of the bird, I think that's fine. It's like there's a couple little, do that there, maybe a couple little lines there. A little more. I wonder if maybe I should continue this line that I've done. Just a little bit, just a little bit. Not too much. And maybe right here I'll do. But you can really see these feathers. Couple lines here, and a couple right there. Thinking about whether I should do the top of the beak. Let me look at it straight on. Maybe for the top of the beak, I'll just add a little more. I'll add a line, but I'll do it in graphite. So it's not as heavy as the underside, because the underside is more shaded. So I like having the darker ink down there, but not at the top, because the top is lighter. Yeah, I like that. Makes the bird stand out from the background. It wasn't standing out enough. That's why I decided to put the ink on. Now I was going to do this little drop of water here. Try. I think the watercolor's still a little bit wet. I'm going to try to do it anyway. Add a little to make it look like a drop. You can barely even tell on the camera, it seems like. I'm going to draw some shapes. Because not every water droplet on this beak that I'm looking at, not everyone actually has a distinct highlight, but there are some you can see that have more shadow around the outside. So if I think if I add that, that will help make it look more like it's covered in different droplets of water. I I wonder if you can hear Kiba. He keeps going brr. He just keeps doing it. Let's see. Kibi, what is it? I'm watching right now. There, I petted his head a little bit. Taking one last look, but I think I might be done with this challenge. I think I've used everything evenly, given each item its own time in the spotlight, so it all looks like even use of all. Even got the white to stand out pretty good by doing the yellow first and letting the yellow dry. Of course, if I had used a lot of water, the yellow and the white would have mixed together anyway. Well, that's why I use a really dry brush, so it would go on nice and thick. Yeah, I think I'm just going to sign this and call it good. Not sure where I should sign it. Maybe I will sign it. Where should I sign it? I'll just sign it in this corner. There. About an hour of work, and my first live Art Snacks challenge is done. I'll be doing it again next month and every month thereafter, so I hope you continue to look forward to it. Thank you for watching.